This is the Master Plan. I am Alex Madamochoritis. The following is a conversation with Angelos Chronis. Angelos is the CEO and co-founder of Infrared City, co-director of the Master in AI for Architecture and Business Innovation at IAAC, and senior research engineer at AIT. He's an amazing architect, scientist, and educator with many years of experience in academia and the industry, where he focuses on how to model the built environment through sophisticated AI tools. He recently started his own company called Infrared City, where he develops cutting-edge AI-driven environmental simulations that transform how buildings and cities are designed. I love talking to Angelos because of how passionate he is about these topics and how true his love is for this non-traditional intersection of programming, architecture, and urban planning. I consider him a teacher and a good friend, and I'm very excited to put this conversation out there. So, my friends, here is Angelos Chronis. Hey man, so good to see you. Finally, we're getting to do this.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
But thank you. I haven't seen you like face to face. We haven't seen each other in, it has to be 3 years.
No, we saw each other in Barcelona like years.
No, that's true. We saw each other, yeah, but it was like for 5 hours or something.
Just
some months
by.
ago. Oh my God.
Yeah.
What happened?
Time happened.
Yeah. It all feels like a dream sometimes, honestly. These memories, it's a bit of a funny thing. How you been?
Life is what happens when time flies. The company is growing, the masters is growing, AI is all over the place these days. So,
yeah, you're deep into that. No, it's I see you all over the social media. I mean, you guys are really growing. I'm very happy to see that.
Social media is like always deceptive. Like it's not really like it doesn't represent reality. But we're doing well. We're not that bad. Most importantly, because in the startup world, everything's about how successful or how quickly are you growing and all this stuff. Like most importantly, we're still doing the things that we love, and that's I think the most difficult thing to keep, to actually keep doing the things that you love.
Yeah, and you specifically, you don't love so many things, so I'm pretty
Exactly.
Sure it's very.
I am not well known for loving things. I'm not like the typical things lover.
Yeah, no, but that's I mean, I know it's not in my position to say, but I really feel like saying it. I'm really proud of what you guys are doing. It's really amazing to see. I mean, I've known you now for more or less 10 years. You were my teacher, and I've seen you be in many different, I don't know, things, just teaching, researching, being a scientist, an architect. Now you have your startup. I mean, I saw you enter that, and
yeah,
I can't think of another person that's more suited for that position. So I'm really happy to see you do that.
Thank you. It really means a lot. Like I also know you like for a while, and I've seen your path. When you say I can't think of a person more suitable for doing something, it could be bad, it could be good as well. I think
I meant it in a good way. Of course, I meant it.
You can also say that to a serial killer, but hopefully I'm not that. But thank you. I appreciate the love. And you remember, I hope, from the very early days we met in IAAC when you came in as a student. My approach to my career in general has always been more or less the same, which is like a kind of like no BS. And that sounds like a very, very banal thing to say, but like what it means for me is like I wish I could do more sort of like political stuff and like be more sort of like, I'm going to do things for things, doing things, but I can't. So I cannot do something I don't really like.
Yeah.
So my drive, and I'm extremely happy and grateful to all the people in my path for helping me being able to get to work on what I like. Like that's the most. What is work? 8 or more hours of your life you spend on things, right? Like you're not thinking about them. You're stressing about them. At the end of the day, if they don't make you feel at least a little bit like nice, then you wasted half of your life doing things that are completely, useless to you.
I've cut this down to 4.
Hours.
4 hours.
I had also for a bit in my life. That is not the place I am right now.
These are the benefits of being a student again.
It's amazing.
Yeah, it's really cool, man. You get well, but yeah, I know that this is gonna end, and it's a little bit scary because soon that transition to going back to working 8 hours a day is coming, uh, and that
No,
pressure. Yeah.
there is a sweet spot like of AI. So if you start doing lots of AI stuff now, nobody really knows how much time things take you, right? So like you say, I'm gonna write this report.
Huh.
You like, I don't know, prompt it, you got it in 10 minutes and spend like the rest of 3 hours like pretending that you're doing the report, right? Which is kind of like what I did at the beginning of my career with computational design. Like, in the beginning, I was trying to do a lot of things very fast and like, be very productive when I was like, working at Foster's. And very soon I realized like, wait a minute, like the more I do, the more they throw at me. So like, chill, I can control this. Nobody else knows exactly what I'm doing. Like the code that I was writing was like, you know, and I was like, well, I think at some point they figured it out, but I was like, for a while I could do it.
Were you using AI back at Foster's?
Nah, I mean, like it's a different thing. Were we using neural networks? Not really at Foster's, like, but like at UCL, like yes. I mean,
Yeah.
neural networks was part of the curriculum at the Bartlett when I was teaching, and I was actually the one that was teaching the neural network, the artificial neural network module. There was one class, right, and then we had genetic algorithms, we had other things, but like the artificial neural network that we were teaching was like a very simple one. It wasn't like deep learning. It was just like a very simple sort of like ANN with backpropagation learning thing. But you had to understand everything. If you want to teach, if I teach you how to write with code without any libraries, without any sort of like stuff, how to code a neural network, you have to understand what a neuron is, what the signals are, what the weights are, what the sort of like activation function is, like very basic stuff like neural network stuff. But you also have to train that neural network, so you have to actually understand backpropagation. You have to understand training algorithms and stuff like that. And like that's the basis of all of neural networks even today. There's like 1,000 other levels of other things that you do, like statistical models and other models, like new learning models. And there's like in reality still neural networks, but very, very different architectures are what LLMs are. Like it's like these like large language models, they have like much more complex architectures. And
But how did you get into this? Because in Greece, I don't know where these things were being taught. Did you learn these things on your own, or was it work that pushed you into it? Was it the university? Was it personal interest? I always had that kind of question about you, because for me, you were always kind of the go-to person. It's about these things, but I never really understood where you learned that stuff or how you got into it.
so although I don't really like talking about me that much, we can cover that fast and then go on. But what pushed me there is essentially, so it is a relatively simple, chain of events. Like I was studying architecture at the University of Patras, right?
Yeah.
I didn't really like. I mean, like to be honest, I was like partying a bit. I'm not gonna say much more because our last finance minister, who said he was partying online, ended up with the police at his door. So I'm not gonna talk about how I partied. I was like fearing these days, things are difficult.
Responsible.
But anyway,
Yes, yeah.
responsible partying, yeah, like everybody, like not do anything that you cannot afford. Anyway, so I really didn't like architecture that much, and like I was like, I mean, I don't know if I liked architecture, but like not the way it was taught at the University of Patras. Like I was like the tradition. I think I've seen the Villa Savoie lecture like 15 times within 3 years. I think that was enough, and I was like, okay, this is all interesting. Like I like computers. I loved computers since I was a kid. I was actually playing a lot with like, even like, building my own PCs and stuff. And like, I liked computer science in a way, but it had nothing to do with programming. So at some point I was like, there's one person, like, I think it's about people, right? Like, I think that everything in life is about the network of people that you surround yourself with. And that's what makes the difference in everything you do. So at some point I took a elective class, which was called digital systems or something like that. And I met Professor Catherine Liapi, who at that point, like, it was the first like
About her
little
before.
seminar I did.
Yeah.
You know her, right?
No, you've talked to me about her before. I remember.
Yeah.
You invited her as a jury once.
Exactly. So Catherine Liapi was sort of like in the US, doing cutting edge research on 4D and D construction, 3D scanning to construction planning. And well, she's the absolute guru globally, I think, on tensegrity systems. Like, she's the number one reference on tensegrity systems in architecture.
Is it about tension?
Tensegrity systems are these like funny systems where you've got struts and cables like connected, but like the struts are not connected to each other. Like, everything is essentially tension between like free moving, like so not free moving, free standing, let's say struts and let's say tension cables that keep them in some sort of like spatial integrity. That's why it's called tensegrity.
Okay,
So she's the absolute guru of that, and she had like, I don't know, like 100 publications before she even comes to start teaching at the University of Patras, right? And she was like extremely different to everybody else there. So like I meet her, and then I realized that we were like talking about ETFE pillow systems in the Eden project in the UK, and how it's built, materials and stuff. And I was like, this is freaking interesting, man. Like, this is actually fun. This is scientifically relevant, work that kind of like can fit into how architecture is working. And I'm like, since I was a kid, right? Like, I was reading on, futuristic sort of like systems, like MIT publications and stuff like that. When I was a kid, I loved like everything related to technology and innovation. So I was like, okay, like, this is interesting. And then I decided to do my thesis with her. Like, so we have this thing in Greece, we do a versus research project for like 6 months, and then an actual thesis project, right? So like, this is 6 months of research, and then 6 months of designing a studio of some sort. And that's the 5th year of the diploma in Greece. That's how the uni works. Well, in my case, and you have like 4 years of like taught modules, and then 1 year of like half research, half practice. I did all of the 4 years in 2 years, like all of the classes in 2 years, because I was like, first 5 years I didn't even step foot into school. And then I took 3 years to do what you were supposed to do in 1 year, just because I met this person, and I got fully into it. I had read, before I go to UCL, I had read most of the important publications I have read in my life until today, including all the books from Branko Kolarevic that recently passed away. And I have like, big sort of gratitude to this person for the amazing work that he sort of like left behind. So
I don't know Kolarevic.
Branko Kolarevic has written, for me, the most important books on digital architecture in the history that I know. Like, way more important than, I'm not gonna name names, but like, the most well-known ones about, the digital turn and like, industry 4.0 and whatever. Very important researcher. He recently passed away, and I was devastated to find out. So then I realized that, like,
know him personally? Did you ever meet him?
I've known him personally. I've met him personally. I first met him in a conference where I went to him and I said, I'm grateful for all of the stuff that you have given me, because like, really, the knowledge you connect. There's a book called Digital Architecture Manufacturing, Architecture in the Digital Age, or something like that. And there is like another one which is called Manufacturing Material Effects or something. And then there's like Performative Architecture. There's 3 books. I think that they're the most important books that have been written on this topic. But yeah, for me, they were like kind of like the Bible of digital architecture. So meeting Yapi and getting exposed to this world changed my perspective, right? And then I realized very quickly that I want to do this. So Yapi suggested to me to go to smart geometry back then. Smart geometry was the biggest kind of like conference on this topic. It was kind of like was considered that it was a community, a very nice community, mostly around Bentley's generative components, which was the software that people were using, and that was before Grasshopper. So I went to San Francisco. I learned how to write 3 lines of code. Right, I remember I learned how to write like 3, 4 loops
Yeah.
and a few if statements, and came back and wrote my thesis.
How old were you?
I was old. I was 29,
It's
28,
not
29,
old.
something. It's old. I should have done that when I was 20. But anyway, so I learned how to code a little bit, and then I came back and I was like, I love this thing. I took another year to finish my thesis on with I did the whole sort of like thing parametrically with scripts. So, and as far as I know, I was the first one that did this at the University of Padua. So there was like actually no one else that I knew in my vicinity and
I
in
mean,
the
yeah, it
university.
sounds like a very weird thing to do at a
Yeah,
Greek
it was.
university of architecture. What were your classmates doing?
They were making fun of me mostly, like it's like saying, what the hell are you doing? Like, what is this? Like,
Bet.
like this is not architecture."
Yeah. I bet they were probably like
Yeah.
designing neoclassical residences for uh, for Athens.
They were designing modernist dreams, which
Right.
is, I think, what they're still doing. Not
Yeah.
my classmates. My classmates, my sort of like friends, classmates, have gone in all sorts of like they've done photography, they've done real projects, which I haven't done much. I have done very few real projects, but they have done a lot of real architecture. I have done more digital architecture, so I don't think that.
Do
But
you do you regret that of like not having done real like build structures?
I think so. I would have loved to do more real architecture, but not what people like. So I have very little interest in the ego side of architecture. Like I worked at the Zaha Hadid, Foster, whatever. Like building, when I see it, and I'm like, oh, I did this. I don't really like. I did the parametric system for. I don't really, and it might have been true for some buildings, but I don't really. It never fascinated me. I also don't. I would be fascinated if I designed a house for a friend, and I went to his house and I felt that the house had a really nice vibe and beautiful views and stuff like that. Like I care about more sort of like earthy stuff. I guess if I was whatever star architect, my ego would be like probably satisfied if I looked at a tower in a big city and said, "Oh, that's mine," and represents me in every possible way. Then maybe I would feel like that. I don't really appreciate that as much as well. It's like I think this is
Not
a I don't know.
me neither. It's not
Yeah.
it's not that interesting.
However,
Yeah.
if I was able to contribute to, and I had like a relatively important intellectual contribution in figuring out cities, configuration that like affect a lot of people, right? Like the transport plan of, I don't know, a city that like solved whatever issues. I would feel more proud.
So okay, can we get how do you go? How did you go from architecture to cities? Where did that happen?
I think this is sort of like, I don't think that I've ever chosen a scale, and I think
Okay.
I still haven't chosen a scale. I mean, like when I was in uni, I did both master plan stuff and furniture and normal
Hmm.
buildings. I like I like all of them equally. I don't think that yeah, but I think that if I think about my career, like in sort of like London Times, UCL Foster's, I was more building scale, but also a little bit of master plan scale because I did like the lab and the things that I was doing there in ARD. Then I was at at IAAC, I was doing material stuff and but also possibly a little bit urban stuff.
Well,
The
yeah,
City Intelligence Lab,
you were
yeah,
doing urban stuff in IAC. We were doing
I was
stuff.
doing urban stuff, and I'm still doing urban stuff. But for me, the important thing was always the analytics, right? Like, so it wasn't really the scale.
Yeah.
So it's about systems. I love systems of design and systems of design work in all scales, all scales. They work in cities and they work in buildings. Like they are essentially data flows, right? Like connecting a certain input with certain processes, certain outputs, information flows, and eventually connecting intent with impact, intent with the performance output, and these systems of design, which Kolarovich actually talks about in the best possible way. I have this quote embedded in my mind. I've started half of my lectures with this, which is shifting from making a form or an urban configuration to making the system that will design the form or the urban configuration is what it's all about. So he was talking about form, but it's the idea of form finding, which was what he was talking about, but the same can be said for configuration finding, right? If you're optimizing a system and you're trying to figure out how cars, people, bikes, and trees have to be configured in a certain environment so that they flow optimally, you're designing a system, and then there's interactions between the system, and what we're designing is essentially the interactions and the configuration around that as accurately or as sort of abstractly as you need, and then you let it find itself or find its optimal position, and that sort of idea is what
Maybe
drives.
in my personal experience, these kind of exercises, they're. I mean, I remember doing that stuff when I was a student, playing a little bit with Grasshopper and coding, very primitive stuff. But this idea, what you're describing of trying to think of the system and how these nodes work and interact and try to make the simulation work, it's a really invigorating, fascinating, maybe exercise.
Mhm.
But as a I feel I always felt that it's distanced from the real thing. Like there's something untouchable about the real thing that you see out there in the street, that you just cannot replicate in your screen. And I feel that it's a little bit of a deceptive thing sometimes if you rely too much on what the screen is telling you on the system that you built. I don't know if you. I mean, I'm sure you've thought about this. I don't know if you. How do you square that? The real thing
Yeah,
happens and the thing that you build on your computer.
yeah, it's a very interesting proposition. It's more touching upon philosophy rather than let's say design theory, but um, my understanding of it comes more from my personal experiences, you know, the perhaps my perspective of how the brain works generally and how perception works. Perception is a very very important word, and I think without trying to go to jail again, I'll say the sort of psychedelic experience helps you understand perception better. I have nothing to do with with anything
I think
related
right now
with
we need to
that.
get context for this joke. Okay, recently, what is it? What was it? Varoufakis?
Yanis Varoufakis said in a Gen Z sort of show. They asked him if he've ever experienced drugs, and he said that he took ecstasy once when he was 15 years ago. And I'm obsessed with this, and that's why I brought it up twice. I think I want to talk about it publicly because for me, there's of course the ridiculousness of being Greek and knowing that your ex-finance minister is prosecuted because he said that 15 years ago he popped a pill in a dance floor, right? And then that's like ridiculous on its own. But what's even more ridiculous for me is like being on the dance floor, like I don't know, high, listening to to like I don't know, side transfer and seeing Varoufakis in front of you. That it must be like a horrifying experience that I think is what people are not focusing on. But let's not deviate there.
Man, what a trip that would be. Sorry, yeah. Let's get back.
What a
Let's
trip
get
that
back
would be,
to
absolutely.
perception.
No, but I think it's an anecdotal sort of like piece of information for the listeners if they reached this point. That, sorry about my country for making it ridiculous. We've been ridiculed. There was a Reuters story about it. But anyway, so why I'm saying that, right? You're talking about reality and how do we represent. Everything is a representation. And we're talking about design systems, how do you like really represent the urban environment? It's a very complex thing. It has like cultural aspects, it has other things. And of course, you're never and you should never be even aiming to be able to um, accurately represent reality. By the way, you can't even perceive reality accurately. Your brain does only one thing, tries to stop, information from coming into your perception, because otherwise you drive yourself crazy. The reason why I mentioned the psychedelic experience is like because when your brain doesn't really work properly, you can actually get all the information around you. And
Right. Okay.
right now I'm looking at you, but I'm also seeing all the paintings behind you, the guitar, the plants, but my brain doesn't process all that information because otherwise it would drive me
Yeah.
crazy.
Crazy. Yeah.
Equally, when I want to represent a building or a city or a neighborhood, I have to abstract and only represent the important components of that reality that help me design, decide, and sort of like perceive and construct new sort of like versions of that reality. So like perceiving that reality has to be abstracted, and especially in simulation. That's because what we're doing is like climate modeling, climate simulation. This is absolutely crucial because if you start trying to model everything, you're going to end up with nothing, absolutely nothing. There's like what I keep saying these days, like the quote of, I think I heard it from Giovanni Betti, but like it's many people have said it. Every model is wrong, but some are useful, and they're talking about simulation models, right? Every model is wrong, it's not accurate, but some of them are useful. When you're sending a rocket to the moon, right, you're not really modeling the path 100%. If you try to do that, you would fail, horribly, because the atmosphere is not homogeneous. There's like gaps, there's like things that you cannot predict, and then you're gonna lose always some velocity here and there, and you will never ever get anything to land on the moon, right? The only purpose is that you can be consistent enough to escape atmosphere and reach in a certain path that you can probably adjust. That's why it's very important to be able to adapt, adjust your course and reach the moon or whatever. Similarly, if you want to design a building, or you want to design like sort of like an urban environment, you have to be able to abstract and accept the limitations of your abstract model, and also to be able to adapt the model as you go, right? So that's like essentially where this gets very, very interesting.
I think
And
that's pretty fair, and I mean, I wish somebody would have told me this when I was a student, that because I remember I was trying to find this accuracy and this perfect representation of things, and it was a maddening process. But I wish somebody, maybe you could have, maybe it wasn't our course, but you could
I
have come.
apologize because you were my student and I didn't tell you, so I
It
apologize.
wasn't, no, but it wasn't your course. Your course was different. It was another course.
Yeah,
Somebody should have come in and said, "Hey, man, like it's okay that it's not perfect. It's actually the point.
yeah,
The point is not for it to be
it
perfect."
should not be
Yeah,
perfect.
but it also kind of works as a as a response to all the criticisms of climatology modeling.
Absolutely.
There's this big rhetoric out there that all climate, it's what you said, all climate modeling is wrong, and it's used as an argument that there is no predictive power in adaptation, course directions, so on and so forth. But it kind of fails to to include what you just mentioned, that these models, I mean, of course, they cannot be exactly perfect. You cannot know exactly every single molecule, how it behaves, to know exactly the directions of climate or the increases, the changes, the fluctuations, weather. It's an insane chaotic system. So it's the point. You can't predict it.
Yeah, so this is where it gets interesting. So like when we're talking about climate, right?
Yeah.
Because that's exactly the argument that a lot of people are using against sort of like, climate adaptation, climate emergency, right? Like, you don't even know if it's going to happen in 1 year or 2 years or 10 years or 15 years. And I'm going to use like both a sort of like grotesque example, but also a sort of like less grotesque one. If you go to a doctor and you have a terminal disease and they tell you you have like about 5 months to live, right? You don't go and tell them like, hey, do you know just gonna have like 5 months and 3 days or 5 months and like 6 days, because otherwise you're talking like BS. Like, if you're not doing that, you're just saying, can I do something for it? Like, is
Yeah.
there something I can do to? Oh yeah, you can operate yourself and then you will be fine, and you won't, die in 5 months. And then you don't question those like, should I? You don't even know if it's going to be 5 days after 5 months. So that's what climate deniers say. Oh, the climate models are not working. At the same time, the climate experts, which I have a lot of beef with very, very often, they're like, no, 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 no. We can't predict if it's going to be 5 months and 3 days or 5 months and 6 days. So therefore, this is not accurate. We cannot tell the patient. And you're
Mm,
like, excuse me, but like the guy's going to die if we don't take the thing out. So
mm.
let's just tell them that it's not like very accurate. So the same, it's a very grotesque example, but it kind of like relates with what happens in the cities, right? If I go to a city and I tell them like, with your current ground material and your current sort of like vegetation and your current water features in a city, these three sort of like streets will be boiling for 15 days, a month in the summer. And you have to do something about these three streets right now. Um, we can argue that the model is not 100% accurate, so it's not like going to be like correct or whatever. Or we can just say, hey, this is useful information. Let's do something, and if we're a little bit off, it's fine because we already done something about this. So that's where like the climate modeling experts versus usefulness of climate modeling is important. And of course, a lot of people make money from the high-end analysis, and they have to be paid a lot of money to come up with an analysis. So that's kind of like what we are also somehow as Infrared City, like now talking about what we're
Do you
doing
know
for
where this is
companies.
coming from? This pressure for accuracy from that the climate experts want. Do you think it's like a
If
financial pressure? Like there's so much
if you
financial
were
at hand here that they feel that they need to
if
deliver
your
more.
profession depended on something, wouldn't you hold this something like really high up so that
I
it's not
think it's
easy
for
for someone else?
self-preservation.
Exactly. At some point.
Okay, so
Not for like, again. Let me
the
let
of
me just.
their field depends on them creating more and more accurate models.
I don't want to appear like I'm attacking the whole field first of all.
No,
So
no, no,
I'm
no,
not
no.
telling.
It's an interesting point. I mean, I
I
also
could
have
say
my own critiques of uh, climatologists, climate experts. I think they're a little bit too obsessed with, not too obsessed, but too self-absorbed with their own tools,
models and tools. Yeah.
models and tools. Yeah, but
No,
there's more.
for me, it's like this, right? So like I don't have a problem with any field or whatever. Like, and yes, the work on climate modeling is hugely important for someone like me because I rely on it for me to be able to build models on top of it. But it's about what we were saying about models and what about and about sort of like accurate representation. And it's not about climate modeling specific. It's also the same about, for example, mobility experts or anything that maps reality. And that's what we were discussing about. Is it mapping it accurately? The question is not if it's mapping it accurately. The question is if it's mapping it well enough for you to make a decision. And we can have different, examples on that, right? Like let's assume you're buying a new property, right? You're buying a flat, right? Right now, what you want to know is perhaps how much energy. that flat would use in different times of the year, because the materials might be wrong and whatever. So a flat that has like a D versus a flat that has an Na, you would probably prefer the flat that has an A, because it will be, talking about energy certificates, it would, you would consume less on energy to, heat, cool, whatever the flat.
Yeah, of course.
Now, one could say that these energy categorizations are like very generic, and this is actually very true. Like, a lot of them are like, oh, it has that much window and it has that much wall, and the wall is of that much, that sort of like U value. Yeah, but like the window is looking at the north, and the house has never like, looked at the south or whatever. So your energy certificate is like actually not really accurate at all. Like, an A certificate on one side and an A certificate on the other side might be like completely off. So there's a lot of like, natural ventilation that's not even like taken into account in some sort of like energy certificates. In the summer, this would be more important than, your how well you can sort of like, insulate the building. Actually, if I can have natural ventilation working, that's a lot more important than that. So one thing is like, can I measure this super accurately? Can I just like take someone and measure every detail, like take the beam model, whatever, like measure every detail of that building? Yes, I can. Now you're just buying the flat, right? You're not really gonna pay someone 30,000 euros to do like a in-depth analysis, right? One could argue that this analysis could have been given to you by the owner or whatever, but if you can have at least some information on the natural ventilation of that building, then you can make a more informed decision. If you as a user, as a buyer of the flat, you don't need more than that. The municipality might need another level of accuracy. So they might need like a different type of modeling for the, for the building. The energy provider might need another, depending on who it is that is looking for the information, different models or different accuracy levels work, right? And then when we're looking at the whole district.
Yeah, but speaking of that apartment example, I think is quite telling, because I think there's a difference there between the energy certificate and the thermal performance of the building, right? So there's the energy certificate A to D, and then there's, these things about ventilation and orientation of the building, you start going to, it's a different evaluation, right? So this thermal performance of the building, I think, is not very well. I don't know about Vienna, but in Paris, at least, this is not very well done at all. This is, they evaluate it. An expert comes to your house. They look at, they have a list of things that they look, and then basically, but they have a smiley face, sad smile, neutral face, or smiley face, and that's the stamp that they put. That's the official evaluation criteria. It's a little bit primitive, and there's a lot of talks about how to make it more sophisticated. They're doing experiments at the national level. They try to include the user, but all these things are a little bit, comfort is subjective. It's cultural, it's subjective, it changes a lot. So there's again so much you can model, right? How do you, maybe you can include this in a model, right? I don't know. Have you?
So yeah, like this is where we can get lost, because there is a need to evaluate things, right, and then be able to make decisions, right? Will I buy this or not? Will I go live in this place or not? Will I invest in this or not? Will I sort of like build this or not? And then there's another thing of having a commonly accepted measurement of some sort, right? Like, let's say you say comfort is subjective. Yes, comfort is subjective. What we say, we are in a heat wave when temperature is over certain degrees for a certain amount of time, and we don't have to be very accurate about it. We just accept that it is hot. So some of these things have to be generalized enough, so it's a smiley face, right? Like, so that enough people can relate to it. If it told you the kilowatt hours specifically, you might get gotten lost. If he told you how many kilowatt hours you need to heat and warm, heat and cool this place, might have gotten. But what you understand is how much money it costs to heat and cool a flat. So sometimes what they do is they say, hey, this flat, 30 square meters, it costs 1,500 euros per month per year to heat it. This other flat, 60 square meters, costs 3,000 euros to heat it, right? So then you start understanding, okay, this is how much I will pay. You normally do that by like looking at the previous sort of like tenants' bills or whatever, but this could also be a metric that you understand very, very easily. Now, when you're designing a building, right? Like when you're coming up with a concept, you give it to some sort of like, investor or whatever developer, they're like, okay, whatever, like, I'm not going to look at the kilowatt hours of every sort of like building. Absolutely wrong, because if those kilowatt hours were like what makes this sellable or not, you would be looking at those kilowatt hours and you would be like, make this building as climate friendly as possible, because otherwise I'm paying, my flats are sold less, than you. And then we can take it to the city as well, right? Like if you said, I've got sort of like streets and people hate pedestrianization and this all this climate things like, oh, you electric car and electric scooter people, like taking our cars away from the street and all of that stuff. And then you start telling me, hey, you've got property here, right? Like if we pedestrianize this street, your property will go up 100% more than your neighbor, who, by the way, will not have pedestrians. Would you like pedestrians? Like they'd be like flying. They would be like throwing money at you to pedestrianize that
Man, I
street.
saw I saw this happen, and not happen, but I saw this being mentioned in real time last week. I was at the construction side of a transformation of a street with a
Yeah,
municipality. They're pedestrianizing close
yeah,
to 1,600 square meters. It's a very wide street, putting trees, turning the whole street into a park, kind of. And you see the municipal actors there. They're evaluating the plans, the construction site, and they look at the window of the building facing the street. They're like, "Oh man, these guys, they're gonna have an amazing view, right? Bam,
yeah,
have that apartment now. Oh, these guys are gonna feel good." And all I'm thinking now, oh, the price is gonna skyrocket. Also,
exactly.
that real
Yeah,
estate
yeah.
is gonna go up. Yeah.
But then like this is where the modeling fails, because what does it mean to pedestrianize a street? Right? Beautiful views for the owners of their like apartments. Yeah, it also means less pollution in that street. What's the effect, the health effects of like not having cars in that street, right? How many of the residents of that street will get, cancer less often and then die less often and then get treatment less often? How much money will the general sort of like society save by, pedestrianizing a street? That stuff is not like really measured. The impact, the long-term impact is not measured. What you measure is just short-term annoyance of like, I can't park my car here, I can move here, I can go there. So it's an interconnected thing that you cannot really easily measure and model. Yeah, I'm a big advocate of like pedestrian streets, like whatsoever. But the society needs to shift like in a whole to be able to achieve this. It's not easy.
I'll give you another example that happened 2 weeks ago. Another street. Again, I was with the municipal actors following a construction site of another street. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
so this street is part of a plan to make cooler streets, right? So
Yeah.
they put light colored surfaces, they put vegetation, they put some water fountains. They do this all over
Mm-hmm.
Paris. Okay. And it's also included in the climate plans as one of those projects that's going to lead to a cooler city. Okay, so it's there, it's mentioned on the websites and so on and so forth. So my idea is, okay, let's follow the actors and see what they talk about when they build those things, right? Let's follow the planners, the construction workers, see what's happening on the ground. And it was interesting because I was there at the opening of the street, or let's say not, no, that's not fair. It was the last evaluation of the construction site before the opening of the street. So the street was 95% complete. They had already put the light colored surface, those zones were planted, everything was ready to open. And it hit me that these streets open in February, and the last evaluation, when it's like 10 degrees, the last evaluation is happening on a rainy day. It's impossible to evaluate thermal performance. It's impossible. Even if you wanted to, it's really impossible. It's 10 degrees, nothing is planned, everything, I mean, everything is wet. So it's really not possible. But at the same time, they're a little bit bound by the fact that you cannot plant in the summer. So
Yeah.
they have to open those things in the autumn, winter, and they do their last evaluations then. And they assume
Why?
because they're too busy and they're opening more streets later in the year. They're working on construct, they're working on planning,
Oh
and they're
yeah,
working.
like you're supposed to evaluate the street after it's operating for a
They
while, right?
do.
Like, well,
They
that
don't
doesn't make
go
much
there with
sense.
a thermal camera or whatever. Nothing like this. It's an
Well,
assumption. They assume that the temperatures will change because they implement the green, the vegetation layers and the light colored surfaces, so on and so forth. They have a palette of solutions. So they say, okay, the scientific literature tells us that these things would cool on average 4 degrees, depending on the whatever. So we trust the literature and we leave it at that.
look, I think that like if it's that generic, like will it cool down or not, right? Like that's the then you can assume it will cool down. Like that's it's a little bit like counterproductive saying like I need to measure exactly how much it will cool down. Like now,
Yeah.
if you want to say I have a street that's like half a kilometer long, I'm planting X amount of trees, right? And I'm comparing 10 such interventions to figure out which one actually brings down the temperature most so that I find the cheapest and the most efficient, but I also take into account what people like the most, then that's a different thing. But you have to do post-occupancy studies to understand it. Like you can't just say, oh, I measured it when nobody was there and it looked like went down. Like I don't know how this is done, but like I don't know the specifics of it. But like I think that there must be like a post-occupancy study, especially in the street, like or post-opening study of how it operates to measure the effect. You can also put sensors, you can also put other things. But in any case, that going back to this idea of uh, the accurate representation of reality, right? Like whether this modeling, whether it is through these sort of thermal cameras or who, you can do all sorts of things. You can literally like, be flying a drone every day for 3 years on top of a street and figure out exactly how people are moving, how the surfaces react to each other, how the plants are doing. This is the ideal futuristic scenario where you got a little drone passes by once every 8 hours, measures, collects the data, 3D scans, thermal camera, people occupancy, and perhaps even like paths, etc. And you collect all of this data. And then if this is happening in some like far future of 3 years from now, where you've got AI figuring all out, then you also get like a full picture of what has happened over here, and that's how the street operates, right?
Hmm.
And let's assume you had this is the dream of every analytic simulation modeler. Like now I have a street, right, and I know everything about that street, and I know exactly how vegetation affects the temperature, but also even how that much affects people's moods. And I don't even have to ask them. Like I know that they're happy because they're like the trees are all around them. You remember Lu Yang when she was trying to do
Yeah,
that
yeah, yeah,
thing?
yeah, yeah, of course.
Exactly. So Lu Yang, one of our students, was trying to say, hey, I'm gonna just like take the picture of everybody, and we were like, Lu Yang, that's not a good idea. There is privacy issues related to this. But anyway,
What a
so yeah, exactly.
amazement.
So even if you had all of this, what would you do with it? And that's where it gets interesting. Like you had all this information, I could look at it and I could tell you, like, listen, I know for a fact that if we increase the greenery of these streets that we want to pedestrianize by 15%, people are going to be happier. And I go and tell people, here's the research. People would say, no, I don't believe you. Who are you to tell me? What is
Yeah,
this research?
that's exactly it. Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. It's about
So
visualizing and it's about convincing.
it's more than that. It's about authority. And this is where it gets very, very interesting. And it's a fundamental problem of urban planning. Now, who has the authority of science, right? Like, let's say, you're the climate expert. You come in and you say, hey guys, we need to do something. Streets are going to be burning. Like, you need to do something today. And, we're all going to die from smog because we have, too many cars. If I believe you and you have the authority of the science, the scientific truth, and you are the university and you say I've checked this enough, this is reality, we'll probably act together. Now, in today's world, that has dissolved fundamentally, right? People are scrolling through their, videos and through their reels and through their Instagram crap, and they don't know at all what's true and what's not. And they just live in a reinforced, bubble of some sort.
Yeah.
So in that society, it is extremely difficult to convince, and the model is not the problem. It's, what you feed your perspective, your perception. So going back to this idea of how do we perceive reality, right? And if we perceive it through the lens of skewed and biased social media and other sort of news and media sort of outlets, there is no hope, right? What can you do to really help? Even if you had the science and you had the models and you had the absolute truth in the sense of what will happen in the street, you have to somehow bring the people along, and how you have to get them to experience the truth, to see it and to believe it. And that's where it gets very, very difficult, right? And right now, people only experience reality through money, right? People experience their urban life through money, right? They say, okay, if I pay more for something, then I consider it bad. If I pay less, I consider it better. Unfortunately, you have to
Are you
connect.
thinking of citizens here, or are you thinking of administrations and
I'm
municipalities?
thinking about everybody, administrations, people, citizens and administrations are all connected through the money. And say oh, I'm paying so many taxes to the city, blah, blah, blah. What is the city doing for me? Where is my parking spot, right? And the city's I'm saving your life because I'm making this a better place. And the person is no, I don't, it's my, my money is, whatever, connected to that. Now, if we could connect somehow, how much I pay to the amount of smog there is today of carbon dioxide, then the person will be well, bring the carbon dioxide down because I'm paying more every day. Now, how you do that is a very big discussion. Either you connect climate, effects to, economic models, or there's, totalitarian and authoritarian ways of doing that. But
Or
there's also
pandemics?
a pandemic, yeah. There's other ways, but I think that's the fundamental problem. It's how do we get all along together to convince ourselves that this is an important problem and we have to solve it.
Yeah, I mean, modeling definitely works in that direction. Accuracy in the models. I mean, I think about what you said. If you had a super accurate model of a street where you could actually show everything from the way that from the evapotranspiration of plants to the temperature differences to the mood changes of people. Again, as a tool, as a visualization, as a thing, as a product, you would show it to your municipal representative and say, "Hey, man," or "Hey, woman, this is the street. We need to change it," or "This is what we can do to change it." Here it is exactly. So there's no questions of maybe this or that. The model includes everything. And then the
You
municipal representative
know,
would still have the same issue, though, right? Okay, I need to
convince
mobilize
the person.
my constituents to bring in the funds, bring in the political support, and actually create a project, or bring in the human resources, the planners, the actual construction workers, and the people that will do that stuff, right?
Mhm.
It will definitely aid, but I'm thinking it's just this one step in a process full of obstacles.
Mhm.
And the people, like the institutional organizations, the bureaucracies, even the geological constraints that exist in certain cities, they can be huge obstacles that people tend to, I think, overlook.
It's interesting because I think at the end of the day, this all comes down to, as we were talking about modeling the environment, modeling environments, modeling sort of like, society, even modeling the climate, modeling the city. At the end of the day, modeling is just a tool. It's the mathematics that make you understand, right? So like you say, if I model the city, I will understand things, right? I will come up with a formula, right? So I need mathematics to then be able to define physics, right? Like physics doesn't work without math. So if you don't have math, you can't figure out anything in physics. So you're saying I need to represent reality so I can figure out, so the data is essentially the math, and then reality, physics is the models, right? So like the models of reality, the models of like the simulations of the climate models, or even the sort of like mobility, etc. models, they're a way for you to gain knowledge. But at the end product of all of this is the knowledge. It's like you understanding whether your flat and your home and your whatever in your life is at risk or not, and therefore making a decision upon this. Now, Los Angeles, California, massive wildfires, how many people lost their houses, right? How many of those houses were not insured? How many of these insurance companies knew that these houses would burn and therefore would not insure them? How many insurance companies today know that the property you're going to buy, or like, the piece of land or your house is in a risk zone, and they're not going to insure it, or they're going to insure it with high premium, right? They know if you're driving well or not, and then they know how to insure your car depending on how prone you are to accidents, right? They probably also know how prone your house is to be burnt. Now, if you had the knowledge, if you had access to the knowledge of, how your house or your home or your city will perform and will be able to operate in a certain environment of the future, you would probably, act differently. You would probably care about things in a different way. If you knew that your house is in a flooding zone and it would get flooded for sure in the next 15 years, then you would be like, I have to sell this thing. I don't want this to be here anymore. I will flood at some point. I will lose my house. So I don't want it.
Yeah.
Whole economic models change, and that's just the extreme of, if you knew you can't use your balcony because it's going to be like high winds half of the time, then you would probably think about not buying a flat with a balcony or whatever. And then it kind of like goes into many different directions. Like I give you the best example that I have for myself. Like I was looking for a flat in Vienna, right? Like, and I was living this 35 square flat that I was telling you before, and I was like, I need a flat with like at least a view, right? Something. And I found this like really cool flat. It wasn't very expensive, and it was one bed or something, looking at the river, like in Vienna. So I was like overlooking the canal, like the Donau Canal, which is like this small canal of the Danube that passes through the city. And I was like, wow, this is a really nice spot, and like you can see the canal, like, and and this is not expensive. What's the catch? And I was like almost going to rent that place, and then I was like inside that, and I was like could hear a little bit the street below that was a little bit noisy, and I was like, I told the sort of like guy that was the broker, let me listen to the noise. It's like, it's okay, it's not that much in the night, but so I was like, I came back at night just to check, and I heard like a couple of trucks passing by, and I was like, wow, that's going to be loud. And then I went home and I looked at the noise map of Vienna, right? And I figured out that there is a noise map in Vienna because Vienna has like so amazing open data. And I figured out that's like one of the hotspots of the whole city of noise. And there's like, because there's like a traffic light and people accelerate, and there's like a 3-lane road that passes through, like it's a little bit before the central part. And I was like, okay, this is going to be noisy. And I was like, okay, I know that I can probably sleep at night with a bit of noise. I've lived in Barcelona. At the end of the day, people are not screaming. They're just cars passing.
Yeah.
And then I look up research, because that's what I normally do. Like, I'm such, perverted and OCD that I have to, go find papers on ResearchGate or whatever, or Science Direct. And I was like looking for papers of like what noise does. So I was like reading 10 decibel extra noise in the night can kill you 10 years than 10 years earlier. Like it literally kills you. Like having noise when you're sleeping is directly related to you dying younger.
Oh my God.
And I'm like,
Seriously?
you've got to
Wow.
be freaking. There was no way I would like rent that flat, right? Like, there's no way. And if everybody's listening and they're thinking, damn, I need to move because I live
You're one of the rare cases where a map actually saved your life.
possibly or not, because I
Right.
may have read the wrong paper or something I didn't understand. I'm not a noise expert, but in any case, I got already spooked and I would not read. But it's an extreme example. But like, really, do we know the health effects of everything around our environment? Like, people go crazy about like buying a bio yogurt or whatever, like, being vegan or whatever, and then they live in houses where, like, I don't know, they're like overly exposed to humidity, to
Yeah. Or lack
whatever.
ventilation, or yeah, like this little apartment doesn't have a
It looks
ventilation.
beautiful though.
Yeah.
It
I
looks
mean,
beautiful.
it is what it is. But
Yeah.
it has its built limitations, and they don't tell you that stuff when you find that stuff out.
And I think, what's going to probably be very much affected by AI is this access to knowledge, right?
Mm.
Because, you know slowly we're moving there, like, from you having to search a web of knowledge to figure out something, like, for example, the noise map of Vienna. Today I wouldn't need to do that. I wouldn't need to go find the paper. I wouldn't need to know how to find the paper. um, you know 6 years ago, 5 years ago, when I was doing this or whatever, like, most people wouldn't be able to find that information so fast, because they would not go to Science Direct. They would just try to find it online, but they would probably find some irrelevant Google ad of some sort. Now you can, like, literally ask ChatGPT, will give you, like, I would hate to say ChatGPT, probably Claude or something better than ChatGPT, and would give you like a very elaborate answer.
Yeah, I'm a little bit surprised with the lack of use of technology in the administration of Paris.
Are you?
Yeah, I mean, I was expecting. I don't know. My whole work is kind of based on this treaty about climate urbanism and how it's very much connected to the tech sector, the Googles and the Facebooks and the Amazons, right? And I was expecting to find more use of digital tools. In a way, it exists in the city, but in a very specific agency. But the rest of the administration is pretty manual. There are some exceptions, but I mean, the use of data is quite limited. It's more
Is
this.
it?
Yeah,
I think data. I think Paris has a lot of data.
it does, but it's very much concentrated in this one agency. It's a silo.
I think that makes sense. Yeah, I
It's a,
haven't. I haven't had to, let's say, interact with that agency, but like, I can see how this can happen, right? Like, it's probably a reminiscent of the past. Like, it's like, it has to.
it's a very old agency. Yeah, it goes back
Yeah, and
many
they
decades.
it's a fight for control sometimes, and sometimes it's also like, inability to innovate for some agency. But like,
Yeah,
yeah,
there's a
I don't
story.
know the specifics.
There's a
Yeah.
story about there's one administration, one organism, let's say, one of the many tentacles of the octopus, which is the the architects of French buildings, ABF, they're called. Uh, they're like they're the one of the evaluators about the built environment of the city. So basically, they evaluate whether a project can happen or not. They're the architects.
Okay.
And they're a small bunch. But basically, they control 95% of the built environment in Paris. They have a lot of power, mostly because the city is a monument, and they have to
I know,
evaluate.
Italy.
Yeah, so they have to verify every single change. If
Yeah.
a staircase has to go through them. And as you
Mhm.
can imagine, with bureaucratic systems, they're not very agile, right? They're not very agile. And they're kind of like at the back of everybody's mind. And oh my God, what are the ABF going to say about this? And can we do this? We don't know what the ABF are going to say. We need to check with the ABF. And oh, let's not have to go through the ABF. It's a bit of a nightmare for everybody. And
Mhm.
there's a story that I heard from an old ABF, somebody who used to work there that I interviewed. And the lady told me that the introduction of Google Maps revolutionized the practices of the ABF in a way that before they used to actually go and look at the changes on site, but now they can
Jesus
do this
Christ.
all from their desktop, so they never leave their office.
This is terrible. This is terrible.
Yeah, that's
No,
the
but
problem.
if you think about it, like, I mean, Google Maps, right? Like, I've said this, I think, in a few talks, which is actually pretty interesting, right? Like, people talk about data, talk about privacy, talk about all these things. Um, which who knows more about a city, the municipality or Google Maps? Because I think that's a really very interesting. Google Maps in many cities has data that allows it to know more and understand more how a city works than the city itself. But by far, not even like a little bit. Like, imagine if I throw all Google Maps places, like restaurants, coffee places, whatever, their reviews, so people's actual sort of like, commenting on things, right?
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
People's movement from the use of their Google Maps, because I'm using Google Maps to navigate, right, or whatever,
Traffic.
how they moved around, the traffic, etc., the transport networks, and there we get even more interesting. All the facades of all the buildings through street views, they have every material on every facade of street views.
Yeah, it's
Like,
crazy.
if
I
I
mean,
was,
variable
if I
that they
was
have.
a,
Yeah.
if I was a municipality and I had control, I would request that data to be open. That would be the absolute destruction of the Google Maps model, but
Yeah.
essentially, it's the definition of public information. Like, I should be able to have access to all of this data for research purposes, right? To be able to map the amount of, like, glass and brick and other things in a street, to map movement of people, etc., like anonymized. It doesn't have to be, but Google Maps has all this information, but we don't.
But
So
what do you guys
the
do at infrared? What do you use?
at the university we use essentially our own models. Like, we develop our own models. We develop we run thousands of simulations in different cities, and we develop our own models. So we
Okay.
have AI models that are belonging to us, and that's what we use to simulate, right? But we of course use open data to kind of like calculate things. Like, for example, I don't know, amount of vegetation in a street. You get whatever, you can use open street maps. You can use other sort of like, sources of data. So yeah,
Okay, so you make your data basically through the models.
we make our own data, like climate data, but we also use open data. So it's both.
Okay, so but the dependency you have to, like you say, you use open data that you get from what, Open Street Maps or something,
Open
correct?
street maps. We also use climate statistics from open sources, like, weather files and things like that. And we also have, let's just sort of like, satellite data sometimes.
Mhm.
So it really depends on the problem that we're like trying to, It really depends on the analytics that we need to develop. Sometimes we use, you know, top-down satellite or other sort of like, the data. Sometimes we use OpenStreetMaps. Sometimes we use, the data we have run our own models. We have run now over 500,000 simulations ourselves. So
500,000 simulations.
mhm,
That's crazy. It's a lot.
it is a lot.
What do you guys do with all that stuff? I mean, I know you
We
have
train models.
you're training to train models. You have to do all these simulations to hit
Yeah,
that level of speed that you guys have.
like a typical simulation model, like a typical AI model to simulate the wind. If we want to train an AI model, we need like more than 5,000-10,000 simulations to do it. So
Do you have to, how do you say, outsource this to external computers, or do you
we
have?
run we run massive, like we may be running like 100 VMs for like 3 weeks to develop these data sets.
Damn, wow,
It's a lot of compute time.
that's where all the carbon comes from.
That's where we're like. So it's very interesting because like we need to run thousands of simulations to train a model,
Yeah.
right? But then with that model, we can avoid running millions of simulations. So
Okay, it
we're
balances out.
actually saving. We are the only AI usage that actually reduces computation time than increases computation time.
Because
So if you want to write an email, just go and write your freaking email. Don't use AI for the email. Right? It's okay. You can write. It will take you less time than prompting it.
oh my God, that makes so much sense. Actually, no, if you take that into consideration, yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
You're copying and pasting the email to ChatGPT or whatever, and then you're bringing back. Like, why would you do that? I don't understand. Like, I write my own emails.
That's good. That's honest. That's human. That's a
I
good
write my own
practice.
emails. I like writing the emails, right, myself. Like
Oh,
I
there's
don't
some
usually.
emails that I really like to write, and there are some emails. It depends on the person that I cannot be
What
bothered.
I don't want to write is proposals for EU projects, right? You don't have to write them. They make zero sense to write them. You should probably, you know,
Just
prompt them.
just prompt them.
And and I because at the end of the day, the people who will read the proposal will take your proposal, chuck it to an AI model, and will get like the bullet point version of it to be able to understand it. So I
Hmm.
think that this means that text is dying in its traditional version.
But
You
man, it's
don't need
annoying
this.
because you can spot the AI generated text. You can spot it. You know when you see it.
No, you can't.
You can't.
No, you can't.
You okay? I mean, for instance, there's the typical use of the. Uh,
If you're so naive that you're using dashes like
I
on
mean, yeah,
text,
exactly. The dash. The dash
like who
is.
does that? Like who keeps the dashes of a? And first of all, you can instruct the model to not use dashes, and
But
then
people don't do it. They get
always
lazy, man. That's what I'm saying. Like, there's a lot of brain rot stuff out there that people. I mean,
someone who managed to stay 1 hour and 12 minutes in this podcast now knows how to instruct the model not to put dashes
just
in.
yell it. Don't
That
put.
is the goodie, the value for someone that like managed to listen to the podcast up to now.
Yeah, yeah. No, but it's a little bit annoying. I mean, it's very annoying.
A lot of things are annoying, and a lot of things are have been annoying as we evolve. Right? People are lazy, and laziness essentially drives a lot of innovation. Right? So, but then there is also, for me, always an interest in fundamentally questioning things that we're so used to. Right? Like the idea that you have to read a newspaper that is printed, I find it very weird today. It makes so little sense to me.
My dad still buys newspapers.
Good, and we should still print them so that your dad can read them. And my late father would also probably do that as well. And I would still want to bring him newspapers to read, but I can't, accept that I have to buy something that has been printed, sent to a kiosk, and then I buy it, and there's like so much energy in it. Just print and touch the paper, like whatever. Like I
Your
really don't
hands
do
would
that.
get dirty, remember? Your hands get dirty when you read a newspaper.
I don't at all like. I get zero fascination from the fetish of the print.
Yeah. Yeah. That's. I mean, I don't know. How do you read your books?
Books?
Yeah. You don't read books?
I'm joking.
Books.
Who reads books these
Piece of
days?
paper?
No, I'm joking.
Do you read articles?
I have books and I still buy books. I find them, interesting as a
As a what?
decoration
As a decoration.
decoration concept for my library. No, but I do still read books, mainly on the beach in the summer in Greece, where is
Hmm.
the only time I disconnect really from from sort of like technology. And I don't disagree with like having things in paper, but like the fact that we're not questioning that is what freaks me out a bit. That we're not questioning like that. Hey, you know what? Like we went from spoken language to I have to explain to some Phoenician, relatively uneducated, like people,
Yeah.
things. So I came up with symbols that I was carving in a stone, and then I went from that to, oh, by the way, I can use ink and just put them in a paper, and then, oh, I can actually do this massively by stamping things. Excellent. Like it's 2026, we can get to the next stage, I suppose, at this level, right? Like we don't really have to do this anymore.
I mean, in a way, we have though. There's alternatives to the written press, right? There, they. I
Yeah.
mean, it exists. It's here.
So like the battle of text versus voice, right? And
Uh-huh.
I think that I have a specific common friend of us that I hope you will invite in a future podcast. Maybe this is an idea.
Who?
Aldo Solazzo,
We should
who
talk about that. Yeah.
our beloved Aldo, and I hope he ever listens to this podcast at some point so that he can hear this complaint. I
I'll see.
used to I used to hate him sending me voice messages. He was the only one that would send me voice messages for a while on WhatsApp and things like that. And I was like, I don't have like the ability to listen to your voice at like random times. And sometimes I'm listening to music, or I'm in a lecture, I'm like whatever, write a freaking text, like normal, like a normal person. And then I was thinking, wait a minute, like I'm the problem, not him. Like, no, I have to type characters in a phone, like instead of like just talking to it. And then you can do voice typing, and it's like really working perfectly actually. And
Yeah, I
it's like
remember I saw this. I saw you doing this. You don't type with your
I
on your phone.
swipe.
You swipe. You're one of
Yes,
the. I remember I saw you doing this. I'm like, wow. I don't think I've ever seen
typing
existed.
is if you're like literally pressing keys, you're like living in a different century. So like you have to like come on, swiping is the
You're the
new.
only one that I don't know if you have friends that do this, but for me,
A
you're
lot
the
of people
only
do it.
person I know that does this.
My finger hurts if I don't do that.
Really?
Yeah, I have RSI or like tendonitis, and it hurts if I don't do that.
So you,
It's a
but
lot more efficient.
for me, it's very counterintuitive because I don't know where the swipe begins and ends sometimes.
This is actually fascinating. It's like it works way before AI. I've been doing this for like maybe 15 years, like 12, 13 years now. And essentially what you do is you're just passing by the letters. You're not even you don't even have to really pass by the actual letters. You just like go close to where the letters would be, and that converts to a text.
That's crazy. I mean, I need to check it again on my phone because I really, it's a strange feeling to me. But I
Yeah,
remember
like
playing with it in the past and say, oh, okay, this is weird. It kind of works magically. It looks like a bit of magic happening in front of you. It's a bit of a strange thing because I don't know how it happens.
yeah, I guess I also I don't know as well, but I guess it's like every word has a sort of like shape signature. So you're essentially by going through several like paths,
Mm.
because you have to go from if you're typing, let's say if you look at your keyboard, right, and if you're going to type, let's say you know I don't know, like art, you have to go from A to R to T, right? And that's sort of like a shape,
Yeah.
right? I mean, you could be very, very weird, a psychopath, most probably, and go from A down back to R and to T. It's not going to recognize it. I can try.
Okay, but wait, try something more difficult. Try the word intelligence that has two
So
L's also.
intelligence, if I go to I and then to N and then to T and E and N, then back to L, etc., it will work. Yeah, it works perfectly fine. I can do it. It's not
How
a
does it
problem.
do the two L's? Does it know that because it's the word intelligence and it just auto corrects?
Yeah, yeah. So it connects the shape of you going through
Huh.
several letters to, well, I don't know the exact specifics of the technology, but I guess
Yes,
that's
yeah,
my,
yeah.
I'm assuming now. I don't think that there's any AI involved, like, but I'm assuming that it works by registering essentially the shape. But I don't know. So we can look it up. How does Stripe typing work?
Yeah.
And then I guess eventually we'll get it allows users to enter text by continuously sliding. I think the system uses algorithms to track the path, analyze letter proximity, and predict the intended word based on pattern recognition and dictionaries. So pattern
Yeah.
recognition and dictionaries is probably,
Got it.
but it's like a very old uh, thing. It's not even, it's not even new.
No, I remember it for a long time. Like
Yeah,
from
yeah.
man, you made me remember those days back in the day when I used to receive WhatsApp messages from everybody at IAC. Everybody had their own kind of style. Some people would send voice messages, other people would send texts, other people would send texts very late at night. Everybody had their own way. Yeah, yeah. I mean, there were people that in the weekends.
Yeah.
They kind of miss that stuff.
Do you miss like being sent messages by your employer during weekends? That's a
Yeah,
bit
I mean,
weird.
it's exactly that. But I know exactly what you mean about the voice messages. There's another colleague, ex-colleague, who I'm sure you know as well, that would only send voice messages, and it would be always a minute long, and the actual
Oh
point of
my.
the message would be at the very last 10 seconds of the voice message. So the first 50 seconds would be, "Hey Alex, how are you? How's it going? How's your day? I'm doing this and I'm doing that. Oh, by the
Just
way."
from the tone of voice, I think I know who you're talking about. Anyhow.
Yeah, I think we both we're in understanding. But yeah,
Okay, but what's interesting now is, like, for example, like group messages, like in WhatsApp,
yeah,
like you get, like, there's like 1,000 messages sent, and you just had to go and attend the class or something, and then you come back, it's like 100 messages. So with Yosha, we have like these Telegram channels, and like we talk to with Yosha and Stasia, we're teaching together, and they have this little sort of like bots that they're the summarize bot, and it just summarizes the conversation from the last message you sent. It's like, okay, tell me what happened, and it just tells you only the basic stuff.
oh,
So
that's cool. That's a Telegram
that's cool
feature.
because you can also do that with probably with WhatsApp, right? And it's like, hey Meta, do you know that you can actually tag Meta AI to a chat, and then it tells you, like, it comes in and tells you things,
I didn't
and
know
then
that.
reads your chats somehow, and you're like, well, have you been here for for
I
long enough?
I don't know if I want that.
Yeah. Anyhow,
How are things in IAC? How's it going over there? The program and
so
I
the
missed the
program is
beginning.
going great, huh?
I missed the beginning of this program. I wasn't there when you guys started.
Yes, yes, yes. So, I mean, the program is a very ambitious and very new kind of program. It's actually it's amazing because it has a very good connection to the industrial sort of like side of things. Like, we have like partners like AIT and
Mm.
Albert's company like Numena and Henning Larsen. Really nice sort of connections, land. And also sort of like my city in Kalamata, etc. And they are directly connected to the students, and
Indeed.
it's amazing.
These guys teach.
No, they are bringing challenges, and they also offer internships to the students. So the students go directly there, and it has, and now we are like running an accelerator, and we're preparing the accelerator, and it's really a very different program, and I really love how it's going. The kids are amazing, and the work that they're producing is stellar. Like, I'll just give you the simplest example. Like Eleftheria Papadosifou, which is like one of the students, did an internship in Kalamata, in the city of Kalamata, where she developed like essentially a digital twin for the city, right? Like essentially in a few weeks, she took all the data that the city had and developed not only a digital twin, but also a RAG model and an AI chatbot that allows you to check, what the city's objectives are. So Kalamata is one of the net zero cities. It's part of like the 150 net zero cities or whatever. And they have like a sort of, all of these net zero cities have a climate contract. What are they going to do between now and 2030? And they're funded for that stuff, etc. And we put the climate contract and the digital twin and everything. You can literally query, the sort of like model. Now this digital twin that Eleftheria made during her internship in the city of Kalamata has been awarded like at least 2 or 3 times already. Kalamata got like the best city award in Greece for that digital twin. Now we're expanding and it's like, and it's really amazing to have a student connecting directly to municipality, getting directly exposed to such high level and cool stuff. And we have students, working at AIT, developing really cool applications. At LAND, the same, amazing, fascinating stuff. And it's not just connecting to the industry. It's also like, AI is changing so fast that we're putting a lot of effort in trying to be like as contemporary and like out there as possible. There are challenges, of course, with new masters, but I think we're doing like relatively well. And yeah,
how do you teach that stuff to somebody who has no idea about these things?
It's fascinating because you essentially have to teach concepts, not tools, right? So you have to understand teaching AI is not about teaching you how to use AI models, and it's also not teaching you programming necessarily. It's teaching you to understand how models work, how to harness different models and different, let's say, approaches, and bringing them, orchestrating and bringing them together to like make something that's useful out of it.
This girl Eleftheria, did she know stuff before she came to?
No programming experience, no nothing.
And now she's coding.
Yeah, well, coding, nobody codes anymore, you know that, right?
No, yeah, that's true actually, but she's comfortable in a coding environment. I don't know, like she knows how to put code together and make it work.
True, and she kind of needed that like in September, October when she was doing that. Now this is not relevant anymore. Between September, October, and now, I know someone. We both know someone that has vibe coded a whole application for a city in 2 weeks that has not even the singlest sort of like idea about how code works.
Explain to me. I'm not sure I follow. How does this work?
The world has changed dramatically over the last few months because like you can now request whole apps from agents and AI models that are developed for you without you understanding anything about how they're running in the back.
I mean, is that a new AI model that was released that I missed? Because I'm not in the coding world, so I'm not surprised that I don't know this.
It's not coding. You can use Gemini, you can use Claude, you can literally like vibe code whole apps today.
What is vibe code?
You just tell it what you want the app to do and it does it.
Like I want an app that, I don't know,
Yeah.
simulates the environment of an entire city, and it does that.
Well, depending how ambitious your your
Okay.
request is. If you want to say I want an app that like I can upload a picture and it can recognize my friends, probably will do it fast. But like if you say I want to simulate the whole world, it will have some questions and
Okay. Okay.
ask
Fair
you.
enough.
I think it will bring you very quickly to a realization of like what you were asking was not a very sort of like clever thing, maybe, or like a very sort of
Yeah. Yeah.
like well defined. It's all about well defining, and that's why concepts are important. Like what we're teaching is not necessarily the models or how to code or anything like that. It's like understanding how to again model a system. And
Mm.
going back to the beginning of the discussion, which I think is great timing for like if you understand the systems architecture of something, and if you understand like how things have to work with each other, you can very easily tell an AI to take care of connecting things with each other. And that's how thinking systemically and being able to model in your head like the relationships between things is enough these days. Instead
Man, I
of
mean,
like
it really makes I mean, literally scratch my head because, I mean, how do you, there's this whole redefinition of I mean, there's this whole discussion about architecture changing and the introduction of AI, but I just cannot see how in 10 years from now in universities where you teach architecture or I mean, the practice of building stuff, how you can only do it digitally. I imagine we're not going in that direction, right? You still need to understand how a brick connects to another brick with some sort of glue, and how you put, I don't know, how you put some two stones together, or how timber
sorry,
works.
but did you
Yeah.
ever in architecture school put brick and mortar together? Because I didn't. I'm not sure like what you're talking about because I went through
No, man. Okay.
10
So,
years of architecture
I
school. I've never touched a brick and mortar. I actually had touched it only in a digital course, like in IAAC or something. Like what are you talking about?
yeah, that's really true. No, but you know what I mean, though. I mean, we both learned how to plan construction details in exhausting detail,
Yeah.
right? How to make ceilings, how to make the
Yeah.
section of a floor plan, how to make the section of a window connecting to a
Yeah.
wall, uh, and there was
So
also translation to the. Sorry, yeah, go ahead.
it's no, but you're right. Like continue like about the how to make a section. I'm like just trying to capture that phrase, right? Like you
Yeah,
got this thing behind you, which has like this. It has this sort of like wooden
beams.
beams and the ceiling and the vertical beam or whatever. Like you want to cut a section through that, right? Like now there's many ways to cut a section and understand it, right? You
Mm.
can probably take these beautiful pens that we have, with the different sort of like thicknesses and make a little beautiful like wooden section, like as if you're seeing the wood, circles and stuff, and it's like beautiful. It tells you absolutely nothing about how these things are connected to anything, but it's beautiful, right? And this is why I love drawings. They're beautiful, but I only cared about drawings when they were meaningful to me, like for me to do a drawing, right? So you can do a drawing by hand for sure. You can also just put the freaking beams in a beam
You
model
just
and then cut a
together.
section
Yeah, yeah.
in a second. And then also you can go to another level. Like, why do you cut the section? Right? You're cutting the section because you probably want to understand if these beams are connected well. Now, if I can reach are these beams connected well immediately without doing the section, do I need the section anymore? Like if the model tells me the moment I put several beams there that these beams are not connected together properly because of this and this reason, do I still need to do that? Right? It's
Yeah.
very interesting. So because it's again going back to what am I modeling, why am I modeling it, and what kind of knowledge or information am I seeking? Right. So I am doing a 3D model of a building because I'm seeking some information and I'm trying to represent some information for someone else to do it. The first thing I did when I went at Foster Partners in the first months of my job was, and I was like, actually, I bring it back because I remember now, like last month, I visited that project and I realized that's one of the actual projects that I have worked on and it's justly realized. And it's the Sheikh Zayed National Museum in Abu Dhabi, which just opened to the public. And I just visited it last month or 2 months ago. And I was looking at this, they have this sort of like, wings stuff, right? Like, so the way that the Foster Partners like delivers a project is not back then was not through a model like here it's not like here is a 3D model, figure out how to build it, but they had this thing that was called the geometry method, which was essentially here's how to recreate the geometry of that building. So you start here, you make an arc, you divide the arc in X amount of points, and then you put a vertical, and then there's an angle like perpendicular to the arc, blah blah blah, whatever, and you like make 3 meters, and then you at an angle of X you start like another like line, and then you make 5 arcs, and that's how you make this whole wing thing. So I made a parametric model from the geometry statement, which was like a massive, few massive books of methods, and I had to recreate this as a parametric model to make sure that this thing that we were delivering was the same as the thing that we had in the model.
Okay.
That we had created parametrically, so that someone externally to the team can recreate it accurately. So, and I was thinking, wow, like, it was 2010, right? We don't deliver just a model. Like, why are we doing this? And it's like not liability. Like, it's not like if I deliver a model and the model is moved or something or whatever, something is gone wrong, I have no way to prove that what I've delivered to you was correct or whatever. Like, there must be all sorts of like issues of liability. And of course, BIM came afterwards and solved a lot of these problems, but there was also liability in how NURBS curves are calculated and other things that that are like that can be wrong. The representation, therefore, like of the building, in this case, is about like liabilities, about making sure that it will be built correctly, will stand and everything, and blah blah blah. But it's also, learning how to draw properly was very important, some decades ago, because it was about being accurate. It was about being, specific. It was about, drawing from different sides helps you understand how the beam hits the other beam and where exactly they meet and where the, metal comes in and whatever, and like making sure through drawing that you have a full perception of all the sides,
all the elements,
of that reality, right? Going back to this idea of the perception, right? And if I can't do this by immersing myself in a virtual reality environment where I zoom in the metal and I see exactly how they touch, and I can have a thing immediately flagged and sold to me like, hey, I see here a problem, solve it, I would probably do, I would know every corner of the building and every little conflict in a couple of days and resolve them.
What's this the use of the VR thing, the AR and the VR in architecture? I mean, I know you've worked a lot on this, but personally, I never really bought the benefits of it. Maybe because I never really saw it in practice. Were you guys using it in the office at all? Were there cases, or was it just a fancy thing that you guys were
I
playing?
think up to today, most of the VR and AR applications I have seen are more on the gimmick side rather than the actual makes some huge sense.
Okay.
But I have also seen applications that are actually interesting and useful. I think on the city scale, it actually helps a lot to see on a physical model or overlaying, on a sort of common table or something like that to see, in a more tangible way things, because the screen is also a little bit like restrictive. I have been hoping for the past 15 years that AR will reach a stage where we'll just be walking around wearing some glasses and, seeing things on top of each other. Like an app I would love to have is an app that, shows me when I talk to a person who they are and their name. Because it happens to me very often, not who they are if I don't know them, if I know them, right? Like if I actually
Okay,
know them,
okay.
I don't remember who they are, like, or their name. I have a problem with names. So like just say, okay, this is Alex, Alex. Then you have like a little Alex on top of you.
Yeah.
Or a pronouns, thing that I don't
Okay.
have to think about, your pronouns, and I just read them and I use them directly.
It's like
That's
a digital virtual ID constantly.
kind of like, something like that. I don't know, like how you identify yourself. But in any case, that's like a joke. But the thing is, for me, like what really is missing is so with technology in that case. It's not really like technology is not there. Like if we could overlay things in the virtual world, in the physical world, um, we could enhance it like a little bit. Not always. You still have to, probably take the glasses off or like turn it
Yeah.
off.
I would be one of the very late adopters of anything like that. I don't know.
Possibly.
I was never really convinced, but I think it's really me. I understand that others find it fascinating, and I respect that. Just for me, it never really hit the sweet spot of what I need from a technology. Uh,
What's the most fascinating technological solution in a city for you?
Technological solution, the most
What's the
fascinating,
most important tech in a city?
the sewage system.
That's a little bit like digital technology. I'm sorry, I should have
Digital
been more.
technology, traffic lights.
Okay. I think I can
What?
leave it there. Okay. Relatively basic tech, like it's
Yeah,
like
it's fascinating. I mean, to make all these traffic lights work together, it's incredible.
important, absolutely fascinating. I seriously doubt it. Like if you get fascinated with traffic lights, I think there's something you have to look up.
I mean, I think they're full of question marks for me. Like, how do they time them? Are
Wow.
traffic lights timed with a specific logic? Is there a specific expert
No,
behind them? What does this person think?
it just like turns off and on mainly.
That's
Like
all.
that's what it
Do they
does.
change? Are there periods depending on the year, like the
Of
traffic
course,
lights in the city work differently? Are they what?
there's whole traffic models that like define how traffic lights have to be switched on and off so that they reduce traffic, and they're of course like timed, etc. But this is a fascinating thing. Like we were doing this lighting project with Maria Gusta at IAAC, right? And we went to the city of Vienna, and we wanted to. She was trying to figure out a dynamic lighting system for cities, right? Like you've got a street, and then you have the lights in the street, and you say this intersection is very important, so I have to light it up quite a lot more so people don't crash. But this other sort of like alley here is not that important, so I'm gonna like lower the lights, and these other like streets are like less traffic, so I can lower the lights. Or these other streets have like so much light from the windows of the shops, so that I don't need to lit the streets, like light the street. Like it has a lot of already existing light. And we're in the city of Vienna, and we said like, do you know what systems you're using? Are you using, is this interesting for you? Because we want to do it as a case study. And they were like, we have a system. We had like offers to do lights which were like controlled by wireless or whatever, but we could not accept them because they didn't have guarantee that for 30 or 40 or 50 years they would be producing these systems, so we couldn't buy them. And then we have like essentially one switch that can only go half or full, and it controls the whole street in one switch. So we cannot, fine tune them. And I was like, wow, that's
Wait,
Vienna.
That's Vienna. There's a
That's Vienna.
switch that controls all the lights of one street,
Of portions of streets, yes.
of portions of streets.
Like a streets which is controlled like remotely, right? That you can like lower it to half or full. That's what I'm saying. And they put half of it in at a certain time and then full, and then back half and then zero.
Man,
Instead of individually controlling every light, etc.
reminds me. Sorry, it's a completely different scale, but I went recently to a school renovation where they were testing out ceiling fans. So they're trying to make a heat adaptation on at the school, and they were putting all these ceiling fans. And that's exactly the question I asked them. It's like, how do you moderate the ceiling fans? Do they all work together, or in the classroom, or can I have that ceiling fan working and that one working? I said, no, no. If there's one switch, all of them work or they don't. All you can control
Exactly.
is the speed of the ceiling fans, and that's it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Technologia.
Technology, exactly like the meme. Man.
Yeah.
But what do you think that is? I mean, is it that difficult to actually make an individual
Inertia.
inertia?
I,
You,
I think it's
institutional
inertia.
inertia?
There's so much inertia in technology, and it makes sense because a lot of things have to be updated slower, and
Yeah.
you can't just jump on new technology all the time, especially in municipality. You have to make sure that things work, right? So if you get traffic lights that don't work, people are going to crash. You have a serious issue. So there's liability. There's like ensuring that the quality of things are like up to a certain, and therefore simpler systems sometimes work better in that
Mm,
sense. But there's also just simple people inertia. It's like someone has to change all the traffic lights with a new smart system. They also have to probably figure out who's going to maintain them and who's going to, and they're like, I have enough problems, you know, and that's not one I want to deal with right now.
man, it's really full of that in the city. Honestly, it's full of that. It's fascinating that cities actually work the way that they do. I don't know. The
Yeah.
last year, I got a new appreciation for the behind the scenes happenings of how institutional actors. I mean, I don't even know if like the people who are actually working, the public workers who are making the city work, their backgrounds, what they know, what they studied.
Hmm.
That's the kind of stuff that I'm looking at. Like, how do they know what they know? How do they make their decisions? Why do they choose certain solutions and not others? Uh, and how do
What's
they
your
actually?
conclusion?
I mean, there's no experts. They're all generalists. They're people who they have 9 to 5 jobs. They have a specific political mandate, certain budgets, certain limitations. They don't necessarily care about what the larger vision is. That they know they have a salary and they go to the office. They have to meet certain objectives and they try to work together as much as they can, as much as it's possible to do what they can with what they have. And most of them, they work with this idea of let's do more with less. It's really it's human. I don't know how else to describe it. I'm not disappointed or surprised. I'm actually surprised at how normal everything is. I don't
Hmm.
see any champions. I don't see any people who are like, oh yeah, we need to do this. Like, I don't see any ideologues. I don't see any pessimists or any indifferent people. I just see workers, worker
Hmm.
people who just go to work. That's it. The only thing maybe that stands out is that how much people work in silos. People work in
Yeah.
silos. There's departments, and they it's
Talk to
more
each
than
other.
once that I see departments doing the same experiment without knowing that the other department is doing the exact same experiment. You know?
Yeah. Yeah, that we see very often. That's in bigger cities, right? I always like also working with smaller cities.
Hmm.
Like for example, like now I'm a technical advisor to the city of Kalamata, and I have worked a lot with the city, and it's incredible what like one person like or two person or three persons can do uh, in a small city just by orchestrating things, but like just by trying to innovate. it's a people's game, right? Like, and everything is a people's game. And I think I also bring in my mind, and that you're saying this, that we recently did a sort of program which is called Accelli City. So it's accelerating solutions for cities by Leading Cities, the Leading Cities Foundation, which is a foundation of like 15,000 people, 15,000 cities. And we talked to a lot of cities, like, and also big cities like city of Boston, like, and New York, and like Abu Dhabi, like really big cities, and their procurement processes and how they work with startups. How do they trust or not trust like smaller sort of like companies, and how do we actually get to work with them? And I mean, it was a huge educative experience by itself, like very very incredibly insightful. But also you understand, like, these kinds of problems, like silos of knowledge, procurement burden, sort of like lack of expertise, lack of resources, um, disconnect between political mandates and sort of like more sort of like timeless management processes. They, they exist in every city, like in like bigger and
Yeah.
smaller cities. And I've seen that normally what breaks these sort of barriers is people, like people who are very innovative, people who try, people who like push through barriers and try to bring things together. And I think that the more I talk about it, I was just talking about this like 3 hours ago. The more I believe in it, which is essentially the connection between entrepreneurship and innovation and civic technology and government technology. So bringing like startups like us, or like city technology, sort of innovative technology closer to sort of like cities and municipalities is going to happen through these. There needs mediation. There needs to be mediation between like the different worlds, right? Like, because tech companies would probably say, "Oh, I want to go for growth," and cities are not necessarily growing. But then cities are the biggest sort of like procurers in many many places, because they have like massive systems that they have to operate in. And so making innovation hubs and like sandboxes for people to experiment in is like this is hugely important in municipal sort of like innovation, I think.
I was thinking about this before our podcast, like, because the tool that you guys are making, I can imagine, I don't know, 2 3 different departments in the city of Paris that could use that tool, your tool,
Mm-hmm.
what you guys do. I
Mm-hmm.
was trying to think, okay, but how would that actually work? Because now I've gotten enough insight on how these people work and the tools that they use, their workflows, the bosses, the workers, the processes. And I cannot see it not being completely disruptive. It would disrupt. It would require
Well,
these people having to learn something new, include it in their workflow, uh, and I can foresee the frustration with the innovation.
yeah.
Definitely important insights, but how do you actually make it work in this worker bee culture?
Yeah. I mean, I don't have an answer specifically to disruptive technology, like what we're doing, for example, is um, going to be having objection, and of course in many places, like it's like I already have a system here. Why do I need to disrupt it? At the end of the day, disruption is not always welcome, especially there's the political burden of disruption. Like, if I bring something in that kind of like causes dissent, then this dissent comes back to the municipality. It doesn't come to you, right? If you have a technology, I don't want to use it, I don't buy it, I don't care, I go somewhere else. But if I'm a city, I cannot go somewhere else. Like, I have to be blamed for the mistake. So I have to be very careful of what innovation and disruption I bring in. But then again, if you're able to demonstrate the benefit of disruption and you have like relatively good track record of like doing this, then that's where it gets. But it's tricky, right? It's not easy. Cities are difficult to sell to.
Well, listen, man, I really wish you guys the best. You guys have a really cool
Thank
product, really cool startup. I mean, you guys are not even a startup anymore. You've been doing this for quite some time now.
We're a startup. We're
You're a
definitely a
startup.
startup.
When do you
We're
break
very
that?
start. We're
When
very
does that
starting in the startup. It
Okay,
doesn't.
well, I wish you guys the best, honestly. You
It's also
deserve.
cooler to call yourself a startup than just calling yourself like a company, right? Like, if you just say we're a
That's
company,
true. It
like
has a nice ring to it. It has a nice ring
people
to it.
go like, okay, you're a company, whatever, like, then
All of a
you say,
sudden,
oh, we're a startup.
you're 20 years old all of a sudden.
Exactly. We can make mistakes because we're a startup. Like, we can do whatever the hell we want. No, I'm
Yeah.
joking.
No, man, but it's
But
really cool. It's really
but
cool.
thank you, and I hope, I hope we have some impact, because that's the thing we care about.
I mean, I know it's needed what you guys are doing. It's just a matter of solving this, integration thing. I think it's really a
Totally.
matter of what you said, just building the right environment, showing it to the right people, and finding these champions and these people who have the guts to
Yeah.
actually, say, okay, let's try this, let's put this in because it's worth it, because it
Yeah.
really is.
Thank
Anyway,
you for saying that.
man, it was really fun. Thanks for stopping by. Thanks for doing this. I was really
It
really
was an
happy.
absolute pleasure. Absolute pleasure.
I mean, I hope it's yeah.
Hopefully people didn't get super bored, and they learned something
No,
from this.
no, no. I mean, people love this stuff. This is the kind of content that I love to consume. So I know that I would listen to this
Thank you.
conversation.
Thank
Anyway,
you,
man,
man.
super nice to see you. Thanks so much. All right. Bye, everybody.
Bye, everyone.
Αυτό ήταν.
I like that. Please the recording. Πάτα το stop. Πάτα το stop. Θα πεθάνει. Θα το υποτιμήσει.
Thank you for tuning in to yet another episode of The Master Plan. I really hope you enjoyed this episode, and if you found our conversations intriguing, don't forget to follow, rate, and leave a review on your favorite podcast platform. If you have any suggestions, questions, or simply want to say hello, I would love to hear from you. You can find me on social media, on Instagram or LinkedIn, or you can even send me an email at alexmandemo@gmail.com. As we continue exploring cities, their history, culture, and the people that make them vibrant, stay curious, stay inspired. I'm Alex Mademokoritis, this is The Master Plan, and I'll see you at the next one.